Welcome back. Now, the ANC has unveiled a 10-point plan to help kickstart the stagnant economy. It's not the first since taking to office in 2018. President Ramaphosa has announced a number of economic growth plans. Analysts criticize the latest plan as repackaged initiatives that have failed to deliver its intended impact and as somewhat of an election ploy. Peter Attard-Montalto from Krutham joins us with his assessment of the ANC's 10-point economic revival plan. Peter, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. And let's start there. Just your general analysis of the plan from an implementation point of view. How realistic is it, given the state's weak track record when it comes to delivering on these kind of plans?
Good afternoon. Well, I think the first thing to say is this plan from the ANC itself is sort of irrelevant. The much more interesting thing is obviously what's going on in the cabinet's economic hotla. They are putting together their own plan, which will have some shades certainly from the ANC economic plan, but is going to be actual policy as opposed to sort of obviously hand waving from the ANC. But there are a few things to pull out, I think, for certain. The first one is the ANC has basically accepted the Operation Vunlower neoliberal, quote unquote, reform plan. And I think that is meaningful. I think that's important. It shows they've run out of other ideas and other options. But the concern really is it conflicts then with other things, particularly around the chrome and manganese industries, the interventionist industrial policies that they're pushing. And so really the plan doesn't sort of hang together. It is ultimately in conflict with each other, and why it's a challenging to see. The unfortunate thing is I think we'll see exactly the same sort of conflict in the government Lahotla plan as well.
And just on the plan, right, it talks about preferential electricity tariffs for energy-intensive sectors. Do you see that as a practical relief for the industry, or is it not a little too late? Industries have been facing, years and years of load shedding. And yes, while we have seen power cuts pulling back, electricity prices are still expensive. Has the damage not already been done?
So I think that's a great point. The first thing to say is the ANC is saying to its own electorate they would like them, the man on the street, to pay more for electricity in order to cross-subsidize these industries. And it was very interesting that Park Tao at the weekend in the Drakensberg basically said, tough luck, this is what you have to do if you want to get industrialization. I think the point here fundamentally is that that's fine if you can actually have some certainty, obviously, around being able to turn the industry around, if it's a time-limited intervention that the industry then becomes sustainable and can graduate from such interventions, from such cross-subsidies. But that's never been made clear. It's never been made clear any timeline how the industry would graduate from this. And people we speak to in the industry, to chambers and stuff, are very deeply skeptical, I think, that this is actually possible. And obviously speaks to much larger global trends going on, not just simply a few interventions that South Africa can do.
Now, a big part of the plan also relies on Transnet's turnaround plan. How confident are you that improvements in rail and logistics can come fast enough to make a difference by 2027?
Well, they won't, basically. I think this is the big challenge that we've talked about on the program so much before, right? Is that there is a lot of very positive stuff that Operation Vulindlela is doing in partnership with business on freight and logistics. There is a very strong political lead on this, obviously, from Barbara Creasy. But actually, the stuff that needs to happen now to really create scale, to allow us to leapfrog from sort of mid 160 handle megatons per year up towards the 250 megatons that the minister has highlighted, are big structural long-term things where, for instance, concessioning of rail financial closes won't happen until the start of 2028. It's after that the investment really starts happening. So there are super long timelines. Even the announcement last week around Durban and the court case, that's still a 3-4 year turnaround there before productivity properly improves. And I think this is the problem with the 10-point action plan. I'm actually looking at a very neat, well-designed ANC, bit of social media on it. But there's nothing beneath it, right? And there's so much complexity beneath each one of these action points, particularly in something like freight and logistics.
You know, that's what I want to get to. Are we just seeing the ANC politicking at this point, you know, trying to ramp up perhaps support ahead of that local election to seem like, hey, we've got a plan, this is what we're going to do to get growth going?
Well, yes, but it's like criticizing the Pope for being Catholic, right? I mean, politicians are going to do what politicians do. And so, yeah, I don't think you could criticize the ANC for that. But I mean, the question obviously is, does anyone buy this?
Yeah.
And I think very obviously no is the answer from the ANC. But we have to wait now for this Cabinet Lahotla plan to come out and what it can say that's different. Remember, in reality, again, as I think we've talked about many times, there are no real new options on the table. As much as we criticize some of the industrial policy factors, they're not really new from DTIC.
Yeah.
What we really have to do is a long, hard slog, like in logistics and freight, right, is the detailed implementation that people like Operation Boonzella and the Presidency and National Treasury are now involved with. And that's unfortunately deeply unsexy, deeply hard to communicate to business, let alone to the electorate. And so at the end of the day, you know, the politics really will rotate off. And the 2027, to your question, and 2029 will really, or 2026, whenever the local elections are, will really only rotate around, you know, where unemployment is and where growth is, and that will take some time to turn.
And I'm also wondering if, you know, we can actually hit those deadlines, the 2027 deadline, when we also see squabbles when it comes to implementing regulation on the back of, you know, squabbles within the GNU.
To some degree, I mean, I think back to logistics, right? The fact the ANC backs, accelerating the plans in this area gives Barbara Creasy political cover. That's not unimportant, right? But again, the complexity here is the day-to-day battles that she has with Transnet, the National Treasury has with SOEs, that DOEE has with ESCOM, right? These are the deep complexities where the ANC's political cover doesn't mean much. For instance, if a CEO of an SOE ignores, you know, an instruction to fully withdraw a court case or whatever, or is, you know, playing sort of malicious compliance in terms of reform rules and various things. And I think that's really where the rubber hits the road, and where, you know, there are dedicated teams in government working at this, but it's a long, hard, slow slog that you can't put on little green and yellow social media.
Something that also caught my attention when this plan was released, Peter, is the NEC saying that it wants to align fiscal, monetary and trade policy. In reality, how easy is that given our current fiscal strain and the Reserve Bank's independence?
So no one can explain to me in the NEC or elsewhere what that actually means. I think you can take from it whatever you want, right? So if you're of a slightly more left-wing NEC persuasion, you can take that actually to mean you even have a dual mandate for the SARB. You're going to be buying development bank bonds, you know, raise the inflation target. You could take it to mean that, but and more spending in fiscal terms. On the sort of centre-right, or centre-left even rather, but the right of the NEC, you could take it to mean conservative fiscal policy, actually lowering the inflation target, because that's better for household consumers, the ANC's electorate, over the long term. So action point 10, this one you mentioned, actually is sort of, in a sense, completely meaningless, in that anyone in the party really can take whatever they want to mean for it. But we should take a step back from that. And I think the broader problem here is the issue we have of the lack of joined up thinking between the OB reforms on the one hand and industrial policy reforms on the other, which, as you mentioned, are in conflict and create wider problems. That's really the issue where we need to see actually better coordination and alignment.
All right, let's leave it there. Peter, thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights with us this afternoon. That was Peter Attard-Montalto from Krutham.